So, with 2016 recently ending and many other YouTubers making their own top 10 MMORPGs of 2016 videos, I figure it's as good a time as any to make my own. A few things to know before I get into the list though, if you don't mind waiting a moment. Number 1, this list is my list, not your list. Therefore, it'll have 10 games that I believe should be in here. You're welcome to disagree if you want to, but your opinion holds no more weight than mine or anyone else's. Number 2, this list will comprise games that are currently alive in 2016, not that came out in 2016. We will have a separate video for that. Just because I list these as the top 10 MMORPGs of 2016 doesn't mean they have the best graphics, the best combat, user experience, or anything else. Simply that they were the best to play in 2016 in my personal opinion. With all of that being said, let's jump right into my list of the top 10 MMORPGs of 2016.
Number 10.
Coming off at the bottom of our list is DC Universe Online, a superhero-themed MMORPG released in early 2011 under a subscription-based model. After releasing to a less than favorable launch, it was decided that DC Universe Online would relaunch under a free-to-play model later in the year. While having transitioned to a free-to-play MMORPG, much of DC Universe Online outside of the base game remains locked out to paying customers only, in an attempt to coax free players to pay. DC Universe Online is a fairly large game and still has a very dedicated active population to this very day, having multiple large DLC released since its initial launch, however, once again locked behind a payment requirement. In DC Universe Online, you get the ability to not only create your very own superhero with unique powers, but you're given the option of playing alongside famous superheroes like Superman and Batman while traversing cities like Gotham, Metropolis, and other iconic DC locale. With a fun and active PvP system and plenty to do on the PvE side of things, DC Universe Online definitely deserves a spot in this list.
Number 9.
Aion has one of the best character creation systems in MMORPGs to this day. Note that I said one of, not the best. Initially released in late 2009, yes, it really is that old. Aion, like DC Universe Online, launched under a pay-to-play model, going free-to-play in 2012 due to lack of interest and poor subscription numbers. Aion has, however, somehow managed to remain relevant, which is a testament to not only its quality, but also its dedicated player base. While very grindy at endgame, Aion offers some incredibly active, fast, and fun PvP alongside a plethora of dungeons and raids. While not necessarily the easiest MMORPG to get into due to issues with latency, well-geared players ganking you while trying to level, and the grind necessary to level as you get higher, Aion definitely offers a unique experience to new players.
Number 8.
No matter how many times I mention ArcheAge in a list, it gets the same typical kind of response. ArcheAge is pay to win! It's a terrible game! Well, I'm personally unable to comment on what people generally refer to as the pay-to-win content, partially due to having never made it to endgame myself, and partially due to the whiners never really giving valid reasons. I'd just like to throw this out there as a warning. Now, ArcheAge is a huge game, like really huge, having multiple different continents to explore, each varying in size and diversity of both race and region, and various ways of traveling, such as by ship, sailing the ocean, or through gliding across huge open areas. You can't help but be impressed. Which constantly begs the question, why isn't it more popular? Is it due to the game truly being pay to win? Is it due to the very comment spreading without people testing it themselves that prevent new players from coming into the game? Either way, ArcheAge offers huge open world exploration across both land and sea while providing an excellent class system, giving you the option of choosing 3 different class trees and merging them into one larger main class. This provides a large amount of diversity to the kind of character you can create, and also gives you some creative freedom over the kind of class you want to be. The PvP, although not incredibly active in the arena, is fairly active outside of it, and although we haven't had the opportunity to personally engage in PvP yet, we have seen plenty of it over the months and personally look forward to trying it out ourselves.
Number 7.
Next, we have a much more recent game, Black Desert Online. Both loved and hated, Black Desert has managed to dominate the action MMORPG market, taking over Terra's spot as the #1 action MMORPG in 2016 and so far 2017. Released in early 2016, Black Desert is an absolutely gorgeous game featuring a giant open world or sandbox world, whichever you prefer to call it, and featuring some of the fastest, most engaging action combat in an MMORPG currently. This, however, is a double-edged sword, as this combat has driven just as many people away from the game, maybe even more, as they're unable to play action MMORPGs, which, granted, is a perfectly valid issue. Action MMORPGs are not for everyone. Coupled with its amazing or terrible, whichever side of the fence you're on, combat, another issue Black Desert ran into was the fact that the grind, similar to Aion, is pretty intense at endgame. While not a problem for many of the players that are currently active, spending a lot of your game time grinding the same monsters every day for a small percentage of XP can be a turnoff. Don't let that disparage your opinion of the game, however, as Black Desert does offer a lot more than just fast combat. It also has a very popular and fairly well-built profession system that you could spend just as much time in as opposed to grinding if that's your thing.
Number 6.
Another recently released MMORPG in this list, having come out early 2016 as well, Blade & Soul offers players a fast mixture of tab target and action combat to create something of a unique combat style. Blade & Soul may look a little dated to some, but the game itself has a very unique art style to it that's rarely used in MMORPGs in the West, or at all. I can't recall any MMORPGs that even look remotely similar outside of the upcoming MMORPG Revelation Online, to be honest. Regardless, Blade & Soul is an absolutely beautiful game with beautiful areas and character models, even if a little over-sexualized. One problem with Blade & Soul, however, is the fact that each area is instanced. Every zone you go to and many of the towns in each zone are all instanced. The game is far from open world, and many people have a problem with this as it disconnects them from the world. While not really a problem for me personally, I can understand the appeal of open world games, loving them myself. Adding on to this is the fact that the game itself is very poorly optimized in comparison to better looking games like Black Desert or even Revelation Online. Another problem is the fact that many endgame players claim the game is completely pay to win in PvP, as players buy everything they need to absolutely ruffle stomp you. While I cannot personally confirm this myself, I can also see how this would turn people off of the game.
Number 5.
RuneScape is the oldest MMORPG in this list, having released all the way back in 2001. Since then, RuneScape has managed to both capture and captivate millions of players year after year, being one of the most successful free-to-play MMORPGs ever made. Even though RuneScape was released in 2001, the game has had many updates, going so far as completely overhauling the graphics to keep itself relevant visually. Possessing an insanely large open world with tons of different environments, a large skill tree that allows you to heavily customize the kind of character you want to have, and the sheer size of the game overall, it's no wonder that RuneScape is still alive and going strong in 2017.
Number 4.
Here we have a tricky one. The Elder Scrolls Online originally released in 2014 to ridiculous hype, followed by ridiculous hate. The game itself was bad, being panned by anyone and everyone for a variety of reasons, a few including the fact that it was a poor successor to Skyrim, game mechanics being poorly designed, the fact that the game all but turned you against grouping up with other people, and many, many others. This drove people away en masse and likely would have meant the end of the game if not for the devs working hard to sort through all the problems the game had, eventually leading to the one Tamriel update that all but breathed new life into the game. This led to what is now one of the most popular MMORPGs on the market. It feels like no matter where you go in Tamriel, there are other players playing alongside you, and that is partially due to the mega server that the Elder Scrolls Online employs. The Elder Scrolls Online truly feels worthy of being called an Elder Scrolls game on the premise of sheer size, depth, and quality, but that doesn't change people's poor opinions of the game when they tried it out initially. The PvP in the Elder Scrolls Online is another area that this game shines in, featuring huge battles between hundreds of players massacring each other over and over. Regardless of its faults, the Elder Scrolls Online brings in a constant wave of new players, and is one of the MMORPGs that anyone in need of a break from whatever they're playing should definitely try out.
Number 3.
Another MMORPG that began pay-to-play and was then forced into the free-to-play model, Wildstar, released in 2014 and free-to-play in 2015, is a large sci-fi themed MMORPG that's generally overlooked by the majority of MMORPG players in 2016 and 2017. This is due to a lot of bugs, balance issues, and overall dissatisfaction with the game upon launch. Similarly to The Elder Scrolls Online, Wildstar had a fairly negative launch, many thinking it'd be the first competitor to World of Warcraft in years. When people realized that this was not the case, they were not only disappointed, but left the game in troves. This led to the game dying off very fast and required a fast transition into the free-to-play market, where it found enough of an audience to maintain itself over much of 2015 and 2016. Wildstar itself is a beautiful, cartoony game that looks great and plays even better, featuring action combat that doesn't rival Black Desert, sure, but is definitely proof of a high-quality title. Adding on to this is Wildstar's PvP, feeling very reminiscent of World of Warcraft, which is a good thing, I guess. Wildstar offers very fast, fluid, engaging PvP in a variety of forms. While unfortunately a lot of players gave up on Wildstar and never looked back, there is a small percentage of players that stuck with the game, never giving up hope that it would be enjoyable one day. And that paid off. Wildstar is a very fun game. It's an engaging and fluid MMORPG that a lot of people just don't give enough credit to.
Number 2.
Guild Wars 2 initially launched in 2012 under a buy-to-play model, switching to a free-to-play model later in 2015 to keep the game alive. While it had to switch to a free-to-play model to remain relevant, Guild Wars 2 is not completely free, having a few restrictions on gameplay and expansions like Heart of the Thorns, requiring a purchase before being playable. Guild Wars 2 is a massive game, like really huge. Not only is it massive in size, however, but the game itself is a very different kind of MMORPG to many that are around today. Instead of going from quest hub to quest hub, there are constantly spawning dynamic events in the open world that you can participate in alongside hundreds of other people, world bosses that spawn just to fuck with you, and a questing system that doesn't require the acceptance nor turn-in of the actual quests. There are dungeons and raids in the game, but strangely enough, there aren't any traditional tanks and healers, instead forcing each player to utilize their crowd control skills and support skills to come out of each battle alive. While some people may not enjoy the removal of cookie-cutter specs like tank, healer, DPS, the fact is, it is a nice, welcome change. PvP in Guild Wars 2 is huge. World vs. world combat featuring hundreds of players in an area duking it out for supremacy is not only ridiculously satisfying, but also incredibly entertaining. Combat is fast and very fluid, having a mixture of both tab target and aim to cast spells and skills. Guild Wars 2 definitely has something for both sides of players interested in traditional point and click and action combat. Before going on to number 1, here are a few MMORPGs that almost laid the list, but just weren't enjoyable enough in their current iteration for us.
Number 1.
Literally one of the only MMORPGs to remain completely pay-to-play, with other paid MMORPGs such as Guild Wars 2, Elder Scrolls Online, Wildstar, EVE Online, and more. Going free-to-play to remain relevant, Final Fantasy XIV and Realm Reborn brings MMORPGs back to their roots. Originally released in 2013, Final Fantasy XIV was heavily panned as one of the worst experiences in an MMORPG ever. This led Square Enix to completely overhaul the game, pushing out the current Final Fantasy XIV and Realm Reborn to critical success. More alike to WoW than any other MMORPG in this list, with the exception of Aion, I guess. Final Fantasy XIV is probably one of the most traditional recently released MMORPGs, having the typical holy trinity of tank, healer, DPS, normal dungeons, raids, etc. However, unlike a lot of games, Final Fantasy XIV has huge open world events called Fates that spawn all over every single map, requiring anywhere from 1 person to 100 people to group together and tackle each objective, earning experience and seals for your faction. Final Fantasy XIV has a very unique class system, giving every single person the ability to be any class at any time. What I mean by this is that you can swap between classes whenever you want to, being able to level every single class on a single character, removing the necessity of leveling alternate characters to pursue a different class. The world of Final Fantasy XIV is very large, with the expansion Heavensward making the game absolutely massive, and the upcoming expansion Stormblood possibly making Final Fantasy XIV one of the largest MMORPGs outside of the king itself, World of Warcraft. Not only is traveling the world on your trusty, lovable chocobo fun, but unlike a lot of MMORPGs, Final Fantasy allows you to take to the skies, soaring above all of its expansion's content upon completion of each zone. While flying isn't in the base game, we can only hope it'll be in every future expansion. PvP in Final Fantasy XIV isn't a main focus, unfortunately, so if PvP is something you look for in an MMORPG, you may be a little disappointed. The PvP isn't bad in any sense, however, it just isn't as fleshed out as several of the other MMORPGs in this list, not having world PvP and all of it being instanced. And there you have it. This completes my personal list of the top 10 MMORPGs of 2016. If you enjoyed this list, disagree with this list, hated this list, think we missed something amazing, let us know down in the comments. If you want to stay updated and get more epic or terrible top 10s in the future, make sure to subscribe. See you guys in the next one.